There is a moment every person experiences but rarely understands. That strange shift when someone goes quiet. Yet, you can't shake the feeling that they're thinking about you more than ever. And the truth is, you're not imagining it. You need to hear this because many people completely misread the signs. They think someone only thinks about them when they text, call, or give obvious attention. But that's not how human psychology always works. A person often thinks about you most intensely in silence, in distance, in moments when they tell themselves they've moved on. But something in them won't let go. And if you've been sensing their energy even when they're not around, there's a reason for that, because they haven't stopped thinking about you. People notice actions. People feel patterns. And when a person's emotional system gets activated by another, they don't always express it directly. They leak it. It shows up in tiny changes in behavior, little slips they wish they could hide, impulses they don't understand. They won't always say, "I miss you." They won't always admit, "I can't stop thinking about them." Instead, they do things that look small but are emotional earthquakes under the surface. If you want to know whether they've been thinking about you non-stop, there's one truth you have to understand first. A person's mind doesn't get stuck on someone because of words, looks, or charm alone. They get stuck on a feeling they can't replace, a feeling they can't duplicate, a feeling that makes them compare everyone after you to the way they felt when they were with you. And if you triggered that emotional blueprint in them, intentionally or not, they will keep circling back to you in their mind like a song they can't stop replaying. Even when they want to, even when they try not to, even when they tell their friend they're done. The signs they're thinking about you are not obvious. They're not loud. They're not dramatic. They're subtle, instinctive, and deeply human. But once you learn them, you will never look at their silence the same way again. Because here's the part people don't always talk about. When a person is emotionally activated by you, they might not reach out first. They observe. They analyze. They wonder what their silence means. They check small things about you without letting you know. They remember your patterns. They replay old conversations. They sense your energy long before they check your social media. They might not risk looking desperate. They might not risk being rejected. So, they think and think and think, and that thinking can become a fixation when they realize something significant. They felt a unique sense of safety with you. Not safe like protection, but safe like understood, seen, and truly felt. As if you unlocked a part of them they didn't know they had. When a person feels that, they don't forget easily. They don't detach quickly, and they don't stop thinking about you overnight. Even if they walk away, their mind stays with you long after they leave. That's how deep emotional connection works. Their distance can mean nothing. The silence can mean nothing. The lack of messages can mean nothing. What matters is what they're doing when you're not watching. And when someone is thinking about you non-stop, their behavior gives them away. Even when they try to hide it, even when they lie to themselves about it. You're about to understand those signs in a way most people never do. There's a specific moment in a person's mind when they start thinking about you non-stop. And it rarely begins with something dramatic. It's usually something small, something you wouldn't even notice. A word you said, a look you gave, a moment where they felt something they didn't expect to feel, and it lingers. At first, they try to ignore it. They tell themselves it's nothing, that they're just overthinking. But the truth is, that small moment becomes the spark that keeps replaying in their head long after the conversation ends. A person can pretend they're unaffected on the outside, but inside they're scanning every memory with you for meaning. They'll catch themselves smiling at a message you sent days ago. They'll hear your voice when they're trying to fall asleep. They'll replay a joke you made, the way you looked at them, or the tone you used when you said their name. And they might not admit it, not even to their closest friends, but the emotional imprint is already locked in. And that imprint grows stronger the more they try to deny it. This is where their behavior begins to shift in ways they can't explain. They might check your social media without interacting. They might go silent for a while, not because they're losing interest, but because they're overwhelmed by how much they're thinking about you. People often withdraw when their emotions start feeling too real, too fast, or too risky. So, if they suddenly pull back, don't assume they're losing interest. Many times, they're trying to hide just how deeply they've gotten attached to the idea of you. Watch their patterns. When someone thinks about you non-stop, subtle behaviors emerge that they can't hide. They might show up in places you wouldn't expect. They might watch your stories at odd hours. They may reappear after being distant. They might send a message that seems small but required courage on their part. They might ask about things you mentioned once, demonstrating that they weren't just listening, they were absorbing everything. One of the biggest signs is emotional displacement. They'll get irritated at things that never bothered them before. They'll act colder or more guarded in person. They might behave unpredictably without even knowing why. This is because thinking about you constantly makes them feel vulnerable, and vulnerability is something many people try to mask. Their mind is fighting between wanting you and trying to protect themselves from wanting you too much. But the deepest sign is curiosity. When someone is thinking about you non-stop, they become curious about every detail of your life. Not in a desperate way, but in a quiet, emotional way. They'll want to know where you are. They'll want to know who you're with. They'll remember your goals, your dreams, your fears, and your contradictions. They'll pay attention to your habits, your routines, and your energy shifts. And without realizing it, they might start aligning their emotional world around your presence, even when they tell themselves they shouldn't. They may distance themselves, but they watch everything. They may stay silent, but they notice everything. They may pretend they're fine, but they feel everything. A person thinks about another non-stop only when they activated an emotional part of them they can't shut off. And the moment that activation happens, they're hooked. Not on your appearance, not on your messages, not on your confidence, but on the feeling they get when they imagine you with them. And if you've reached that point in their mind, they're already deeper into you than they're willing to confess. One of the clearest signs they're thinking about you non-stop is when their behavior becomes inconsistent in ways you can't logically explain. They become warm, then cold, engaged, then distant, curious, then withdrawn. Most people misread this as disinterest or emotional immaturity, but in reality, it's internal conflict. They're thinking about you far more often than they're comfortable with, and part of them wants to lean in, while another part is terrified of wanting you too much. A person who can't stop thinking about you struggles with emotional control. You'll notice they take longer to reply. Not because they don't care, but because they overthink everything. They rewrite the message. They delete the message. They hesitate because they don't want to say something that reveals how they truly feel. They want you to think they're calm, collected, untouched. But inside, they're anything but. Their emotional tells start slipping. They ask questions they don't need the answers to. They bring up topics that lead back to you. They remember tiny details that even you forgot you mentioned. And there's a moment where they try to pull away, not because they lost interest, but because they realize they're already losing control over the way they feel. The psychological truth is this: when a person can't stop thinking about another, they try to re-regulate themselves by creating distance. They want to test if they can go without you. They want to see if they can break the emotional loop. But the more they try to disconnect, the more tightly their mind clings to the idea of you. And that's why they always circle back. That's why they watch your story. That's why they send a random message. That's why they ask how you've been, even when they pretend they were just curious. Another sign is emotional sensitivity. They react more strongly to your words than to others. If you take long to reply, they overthink it. If you sound different, they feel it. If you seem distant, they wonder if they did something wrong. You occupy emotional real estate in their mind, and they might measure their value through your responses without even realizing they're doing it. Then there's subconscious mirroring. They may start picking up your phrases, your humor, your patterns of speech. They might adopt your interests or show sudden enthusiasm for things they never cared about before. It's not manipulation. It's emotional resonance. When a person thinks about someone often, their mind naturally aligns with that person's energy. They become more attentive, more intuitive, more synchronized with who you are. But one of the strongest, most undeniable signs is when they get protective of your attention. They won't say it out loud. They won't admit it. But they'll subtly react when they think someone else has your interest. Their mood changes. Their tone shifts. Their replies get shorter or strangely enthusiastic, depending on the emotion they're trying to hide. Jealousy is a powerful indicator, but it appears quietly when someone thinks about you nonstop. They're not obsessed with your presence. They're obsessed with the emotional experience they attach to you. And that emotional experience is what keeps replaying inside their mind, hours after the conversation ends, days after the silence begins, weeks after they try to move on. When a person is emotionally invested, they can't hide it for long. Their words may lie, their silence may pretend, but their patterns always tell the truth. The next layer goes deeper than behavior. It goes into emotional psychology, into the way a mind attaches itself to someone it can't stop thinking about. Most people underestimate the intensity of emotional memory. Once a person feels something powerful with you, trust, attraction, safety, excitement. That feeling embeds itself into their subconscious. They don't choose it. They don't control it. It happens naturally and it stays longer than they want it to. A person thinks about you nonstop when you trigger their emotional imagination. This is the space where they play out scenarios, fantasies, possibilities, and conversations in their mind involving you. They imagine what you would do, how you would react, what you would say. Emotional imagination becomes emotional attachment, even if you haven't spoken in days. And this is where their behavior starts reflecting their inner world. They begin comparing every other person to you. Not because they're trying to, but because their mind is measuring emotional resonance. If someone else makes them laugh, they wonder if that person can make them laugh like you did. If someone compliments them, they wonder why it doesn't hit the same. If someone new tries to get close, they realize they don't feel the same spark. And this comparison loop is one of the strongest signs they're thinking about you constantly. Another powerful sign is emotional triggers. A song, a scent, a place, a phrase, anything connected to you activates their emotions instantly. They could be having a normal day, but something reminds them of you, and suddenly they're spiraling back into memories of your presence. People feel through association, and every emotional trigger pulls them deeper into the thought of you. And then comes resistance. Their attempt to suppress these feelings. They tell themselves they're over you. They tell themselves they shouldn't care. They tell themselves they need to move on. But the harder they try to fight their thoughts, the stronger they grow. Suppressed emotion often becomes amplified emotion. And they know that. They feel that, but they can't always stop it. This is why they keep checking your profile without interacting. This is why they reappear after disappearing. This is why they show random bursts of interest. Their mind can't disconnect from the emotional experience you created in them. And no matter how much they try to distract themselves, the emotional pull brings them back. One of the most telling signs is emotional projection. They might act irritated, cold, distant, or dismissive. But these reactions can come from wanting you more than they're comfortable admitting. A person who truly doesn't care doesn't act defensive. They don't act overly emotional. They don't pay that kind of attention. The presence of strong emotion is evidence of deep thought. And the stronger the emotion, the more often you're living rent-free in their mind. But the deepest sign is vulnerability. When a person starts revealing personal things, their fears, their dreams, their insecurities. That is not always casual conversation. That is emotional trust. And emotional trust is the foundation of emotional attachment. If they opened that door even once, they likely haven't forgotten it. They haven't fully closed it. They haven't completely moved past it. A person thinks about you non-stop when you touch them on an emotional level they didn't expect and can't replicate with anyone else. There's a final sign that blends everything together. A sign that reveals they are thinking about you far more than they let on: emotional gravity. This is when their energy naturally pulls back toward you. Even after distance, even after silence, even after arguments or misunderstandings, they find themselves wanting to hear from you. Even when they tell themselves they shouldn't, they catch themselves looking for your name in their notifications. They replay old conversations because they still make them feel something. And they wonder what you're doing, who you're with, and whether you ever think of them, too. Emotional gravity is powerful because it overrides logic. A person can talk themselves out of texting you, but they can't always talk themselves out of thinking about you. They can distract themselves with work or friends, but the distraction doesn't last. They can try to move on, but something always feels incomplete. This is because their emotions attach to you in a way they didn't plan, and emotional attachment doesn't detach easily. Another undeniable sign is emotional timing. They reach out at moments when they feel emotionally exposed, late at night, early in the morning, or during moments of vulnerability. People don't always reach out at those times unless someone is truly on their mind. And even if they don't message, they might hover, check your profile, or linger around your digital presence, waiting for a sign from you. Then there's emotional consistency. Even if they distance themselves, their energy always returns. Even if they act uninterested, they still react emotionally to you. Even if they try to move on, they struggle to connect with anyone else on the same emotional level. And this is the truth many never realize. If a person is thinking about you non-stop, their heart is often ahead of their mind. Their emotions have already made a decision their logic is trying to undo. You'll also notice emotional softness. The way they speak to you becomes gentler. The way they look at you becomes more meaningful. The way they respond to you feels more personal. They may not say it, but their eyes, their tone, their attention, they reveal everything. People express affection through emotional presence long before they always express it through words. One more powerful sign is emotional memory. When they can recall your habits, your interests, your preferences, or specific things you said, it means they were deeply paying attention. A person only memorizes what matters to them emotionally. If they remember the little things, they've been thinking about you long after the moment's passed. But one of the strongest signs of all is a certain type of fear. Fear of losing the connection, fear of misreading things, fear of wanting you more than you want them. That fear is not necessarily weakness, that fear can be a sign of emotional investment. Fear often only exists when someone matters. So if they show these signs, understand this: they're likely thinking about you far more intensely than they want you to know. They're replaying the idea of you, the energy of you, the presence of you. They're wrestling with emotions they didn't expect to feel.